What if I told you that the most powerful weapon Genghis Khan ever built wasn't a sword, a siege machine, or an army? What if the secret behind the greatest military empire in human history wasn't a battlefield tactic at all, but a system? A system so far ahead of its time that nothing would come close to matching it for another 600 years. Today we are pulling back the curtain on the hidden engine of Mongol dominance, and once you see how it worked, you'll never look at history the same way again. To understand what the Mongols built, you first need to understand the world they were operating in. It's the early 13th century. Communication across vast distances is brutally slow. A medieval army could move maybe 20 to 30 kilometers in a day. A message traveled at the speed of whoever was carrying it, and that person could only ride as fast as his horse could endure before collapsing. Empires fell not because their armies were weak, but because their information was slow. By the time a king learned about a rebellion 500 miles away, it had already spread. By the time a general received new orders, the situation on the ground had already changed. This was the world Genghis Khan inherited, a world where distance was an unconquerable enemy, and then he conquered it. Genghis Khan understood something that no ruler before him had fully grasped. The side that knows more wins, not just on the battlefield, but in governance, in logistics, in war strategy. So beginning around 1206, the Mongols began constructing what would become the medieval world's most sophisticated communication network, the Yam. The idea was elegant in its simplicity. Relay stations, called urtu, were placed every 20 to 40 miles across the entire empire, not on paved Roman roads, but across open steppe, scorching desert, frozen Siberian tundra, and mountain passes in Tibet. Wherever the empire reached, the Yam followed. Each station was stocked with up to 300 to 400 fresh horses at any given time, along with food, lodging, and trained support staff. The messenger didn't stop. He swapped horses and kept riding, or handed the message to the next rider entirely. The result was staggering. A single message could travel 200 to 300 kilometers in a single day. For comparison, the famous Roman cursus publicus, the gold standard of the ancient world, managed roughly 50 miles a day. The Mongol Yam was nearly 4 times faster. But this raises a critical question. Who was actually doing the riding? Here's where the story gets fascinating. The Mongols didn't just build infrastructure, they engineered human performance to match it. The riders who powered the Yam were known as Kallion, arrow messengers. These weren't ordinary couriers. They were elite military personnel, often drawn directly from the Imperial Guard, trained from birth for endurance and speed. And the distances they covered were brutal. Riding 200 to 300 kilometers in a single day meant hours of non-stop galloping across some of the most punishing terrain on Earth. The vibration alone, the constant impact of a horse's hooves on hard ground, could cause internal organ damage, skeletal stress, and complete physical collapse. So the arrow messengers did something remarkable. They bound their bodies. Before a long ride, a messenger would wrap himself tightly with long strips of cloth, compressing his abdomen, torso, and even his head. It was a primitive but effective form of compression gear, the medieval version of a performance suit, that allowed the human body to endure what should have been impossible. But the system didn't rely on human endurance alone. Each messenger also wore a belt fitted with bells. As he approached the next relay station at full gallop, the rhythmic jingling could be heard from a distance. Station staff would hear him coming and have a fresh horse ready before he even slowed down. The swap was seamless. The message never stopped moving, day or night, rain or snow, across 12 million square miles of empire. And here's what that speed actually meant in practice. A royal decree issued in Karakoram, the Mongol capital, could reach the frontiers of the empire in days. A rebellion detected in the morning could have troops mobilized by nightfall. Enemy movements reported by a spy in Persia could reach a Mongol general in China before that general had even finished his next meal. Now stay with me here, because this is where the yam stopped being just a communication tool and became something far more dangerous. The Mongol generals, men like Subutai and Jebe, were operating multiple army corps simultaneously, often thousands of miles apart. Coordinating those forces in real time should have been impossible. The yam made it routine. During the invasion of Khwarezm, the powerful Islamic empire spanning modern-day Iran and Central Asia, Genghis Khan used the yam to run simultaneous, multi-pronged attacks across a front stretching hundreds of miles. Each general knew where the others were. Each unit could be redirected within hours. The enemy, lacking any equivalent system, couldn't figure out where the real threat was coming from. By the time they reacted, it was already over. But the yam wasn't just tactical, it was psychological. During the siege of Bukhara, Genghis Khan ensured that news of the city's fall, news of Mongol brutality and overwhelming force, reached the next target, Samarkand, before his army did. The psychological damage was done before a single soldier arrived at the gates. The yam was spreading fear faster than horses could carry armies. Access to this network was ruthlessly controlled through the paisa, a metal passport tablet that identified the bearer's rank and authority. Golden paisa holders could seize resources, commandeer horses, and override provincial officials. The network was kept clear for military intelligence, critical orders, and state business. No congestion, no delays, pure, uninterrupted speed when it mattered most. And if anyone interfered with the system, the Great Yasa, the Mongol law code, made the consequences clear. Stealing a horse, death. Failing to provide a replacement horse to a stranded messenger, death. The yam was protected not just by soldiers, but by the most merciless legal code of the medieval world. The yam's impact didn't end with the wars. Under Kublai Khan, the system expanded into a full administrative backbone of the empire, eventually managed by a dedicated bureau of transmission that coordinated personnel, construction, and supply across the entire network. And as the Mongol peace, the Pax Mongolica, settled over Eurasia, the yam became the foundation of the greatest era of Silk Road trade in history. Merchants, scholars, physicians, and diplomats could move from Korea to Persia with relative safety. Persian doctors were brought to China. Chinese technologies like gunpowder and paper currency moved westward. Religious figures, Buddhist monks, Islamic scholars, Nestorian Christians traveled freely across the empire, producing a cultural exchange unlike anything the world had seen. Under Kublai Khan alone, the empire established over 20,000 public schools, an unprecedented achievement, made possible because the infrastructure to organize and supply them already existed. The yam's legacy didn't die with the empire either. The Russian Empire absorbed the Mongol relay model. The Russian word yamshchik, meaning coachman, is a direct descendant of the yam. The Ming dynasty and the Safavids both adopted elements of the system. Centuries later, when you look at the hub-and-spoke model used by FedEx and DHL, goods moving through central nodes to maximize efficiency, you're looking at a principle the Mongols systematized 800 years ago. And then there's the dark side. The same network that connected the world also accelerated the Black Death. The relay stations and trade routes that carried silk from China to the Black Sea also carried plague-bearing fleas and rats, faster than the disease could have traveled on its own. The yam was, in a grim sense, history's first global biological security breach. The sword cuts both ways. The Mongol yam was a reminder that in history, the most powerful weapon isn't always a sword or a shield. Sometimes, it's the speed at which you can share an idea. This medieval information superhighway changed the world forever, for better and for worse. If you found this deep dive into the logistics of history fascinating, make sure to join the conversation in the comments below. What other hidden technologies from the past do you think shaped the modern world? Don't forget to subscribe for more insights into the strategies and systems that defined the greatest empires in history. We'll see you in the next one.